I think AI now is starting to become a tool which I'm seeing now a lot is the prompting piece. It's becoming more and more critical. For me, that's like where you as an individual around what you want to get out of AI, the prompting should be owned by you, because that's your critical thinking in terms of the output that you're looking for with AI. The trend that I'm picking up on, and this is my view, is that everybody's looking at reducing workforce because they feel that AI and AI capabilities are going to increase productivity. Humans should own the goal. Like you should own the goal of what you're trying to achieve. And if you put all that together, then AI is your biggest companion, right?
Work is changing. That's not a prediction anymore. It's just Tuesday. And the leaders doing it well aren't the ones with all the answers. They're the ones asking better questions. I'm Dave Kenyon, and this is Evolving Workforce. Today we're talking about what it really takes to manage a workforce across borders and why the psychological impact of AI on people is becoming just as important as the operational challenge. My guest today is Tim Malhi, Senior Director at TMF Group, one of the world's leading providers of compliance and administrative services across more than 80 countries. Tim works with organisations expanding into Asia and is the front row seat to how workforce complexity and workforce anxiety is shifting in real time. Tim, great to have you on Evolving Workforce.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate the introduction. Look, it's a great opportunity to talk through this. And from my point of view, it'd be good to sort of talk through my experience. Although I'm here, I work with TMF. This is definitely my personal experience that we're going to be talking about today.
Absolutely.
So I look forward to it.
Yeah, no, looking forward to having this chat with you.
Yep.
You've got an incredible amount of experience, and you've worked with organisations across Asia and globally, across
Sure.
organisations like ADP and TMF. What are you seeing now is the biggest shift when you think about workforce?
Yeah, so many elements to that question to sort of answer, but I'll start with the biggest shift. Obviously, is the transformation that's happening with AI. A lot of organisations now are sort of going through that process of understanding what do those implications mean to how we engage with our employees, and most importantly, how our employees manage that capability in terms of productivity. And then the other piece is the client engagement piece as well, right? Which is how do we give all the right tools for our employees to manage those types of outcomes that benefit both the client, but then put us or put organisations in an area that they can sort of leverage enhanced capabilities and understanding what those are, right? Really.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. And in terms of the complexity of managing workforce, you've seen this managing across Asia, multiple countries. The complexity and the compliance is not getting easier; it's getting harder.
Yes.
Even with better technology. Do you want to talk us through that?
Yeah, and I think we start with the pace of change that goes with that. So, for example, different countries will have different requirements, and it's always changing. So organisations have to be aware of how they plan for it.
Yeah.
Like with Australia, there's a lot of change happening at the moment with regards to super, and we sit down as an organisation in terms of the clients that we support to get them prepared for that change process, what those requirements are, what their responsibilities are, and ultimately mitigating risk. So where can it go wrong? How can it go wrong? And I think that's applicable to every country within the Asia-Pac region. Another point to think about is that where resourcing and cost of resourcing and skill set of person, that always plays a big part. So where organisations might think in different regions that we might have capabilities that we might have to manage internally and have resourcing for it, or we can outsource it. And then certain countries where the cost structures are different in terms of resourcing, that might be a different outcome. So it's all those types of nuances and trying to manage that through. So when you're a multi-country organisation, you lend a lot towards your leaders to have that level of capacity and understanding. and that's a lot of trust that you have to put into how they see what those requirements are. However, you need partners, right? So that plays a big part as well. With my experience, it's the technology part, which is what global technologies can we implement into these organisations that will give us that template, and that template will be a proven template because the solutions are built around those requirements. And then working with service partners to say, well, we've invested in these types of technologies. Can you help us with managing the resourcing around those technologies? And can you have in-country support? And then that goes with its own challenges as well, where some organisations might look at hubbing, services through their business in different regions because of costing and productivity. However, then you have to build out those skill sets within those teams and within those shared service functions, whilst other organisations will look at working with companies that can provide local resources to manage local outcomes. So, and then an industry comes into play as well, where depending on the industries that you operate in as an organisation, that the regulation and the requirements that go with it have different types of implications, right? So, if you sit within, say, the pharmaceutical industry vertical, that has its own, obligations per country, per region, and then whilst if you're in business services, those requirements might be different, but they're more about just being compliant in terms of the local, authorities in terms of what's required to operate a business in those regions.
Let's just dig into a little bit about the beauty of TMF is that you're able to expand into multiple countries quite quickly using the entities that TMF have. Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about what TMF does.
Yeah, so TMF, is an amazing company in one sense that it's a services company, but it drives two types of outcomes, right? Which is it looks at providing global services with local resources, right? So I think that's very powerful, right? Why is it powerful? Because when an organisation, so an example would be an organisation looks to grow and they see Australia as a target market, they'll reach out to us and they'll ask the baseline questions, which is, how do we set up our capabilities in Australia? What's the best business structures that we can put in place? And we'll provide guidance around that. They'll still work with, other organisations that might give them advisory around what those structures should look like. So our job is to help guide them around the blueprint that they've been given. And
what do they consistently underestimate when they're expanding into Australia or into other countries in Asia?
Yeah, I think when we think about Australia, I'd say the regulatory and the compliance requirements, and the investment that has to go into that, and understanding that, and the ongoing requirements of those responsibilities. I think that's always an eye-opener for them. And then also the complexities in terms of the end-to-end business model, which is not just complying and setting up the entity, but the ongoing tax and accounting requirements, making sure you get partners that understand what needs to be done at the right times. And then also the people piece, right? So Australia, again, it's highly regulated in terms of what you need to do to support your people. So when they're coming into Australia, they start to realise that there's a lot of baseline requirements to operate in Australia, which in other countries might be seen to be not as what's the right word? Not as detailed, or the liability doesn't sit as high as what it is in Australia in terms of requirements.
Would you say that Australia is the most complex in terms of Asia Pacific region?
Yeah, I would say yes. From my point of view, we do, like with TMF, we do a complexity benchmarking index survey every year, and Australia is definitely up there in terms of the complexity of doing business in Australia. But in terms of Asia, to answer that part of the question, again, it goes back to the country that you're targeting to grow in. Still can be very complex. Probably the cultural piece is in different regions, understanding the nuances of the culture around, what it takes in terms of time, setting up. I think that's the speed of setting up an entity or setting up a business operating, framework within that country in terms of your goals versus what's required in that country. I think that can be overwhelming for organisations as well, and that's why I think with us, where we've got local people, we can have that discussion straight away, right? Which is a practical discussion, I call it, where when you're getting advice, you're getting ultimate advice around what is the best case business operating model around you being successful or your organisation being successful in that country. But what we do is probably put a practical lens around that by saying all my experience in terms of how I operate and work with my colleagues is that when we're working with someone that's locally, like myself, based in that country, we can pick up on those nuances straight away to say, hey, you need X amount in terms of what you require around investment to get this up and running. So there's a capital play. Do you have that injection? Are you across it? How are you preparing for it? Also, here's other areas of complexity that are unique to our country that you need to consider. So the main point around that is that you need to have local knowledge, and you need organisations or partners that are very geared around a certain outcome. The freedom for us is that we don't focus on the advisory side. We focus on the operational and the guidance and the application and getting it up and running.
Now, we're going to talk about AI,
Yep.
and we've talked about this off air before.
Yeah, we have.
There's a real anxiety emerging in teams around AI, not just about jobs, but personal value. Talk to me about that. How widespread is that, and what's your thoughts around that, Tim?
Yeah, so look, it's absolutely a hot topic, right? Like, just today, part of my son's school was that we had a session this morning about career pathways through AI. The reason I bring that up is that it's everywhere, right? So it's you being a parent to you being a business owner or you being part of an organisation, right? You're constantly asking this question around AI. So I think about AI. I start with the first piece, which is, from my point of view, is what's the purpose of AI in that organisation or your organisation?
It's a very good point. You can be led quite a bit by the AI extensively, and sometimes you've got to step back and say, hang on, what am I trying to achieve here? What do I really want when I'm using AI? Yeah. What outcome am I looking for? But also, keep that critical thinking hat on yourself. That's a very good point, Tim. Now, this is a question that we've sort of talked about too, is does AI replace jobs or just tasks? What are you seeing on the ground right now?
So look, at the moment, I think everybody's looking for AI to, I wouldn't say replace, to increase outcome based on improved productivity.
Yeah.
Okay. So what does that mean? Fundamentally, they're saying, most organisations are saying, how credible are we going to be in terms of our client base if we don't get the right AI capabilities put into our business for being competitive in terms of our output? So then the layers come into it, which is how can AI help us with how we operate as a business from a function standpoint? And that could go back to your operational functions around requirements. It could be if you're a production company or you see within industry, then what does that mean in terms of what can AI do to drive efficiencies in process? And then the other piece is the people, right? It's how do we get the most out of our people? How do we engage with our people proactively? But fundamentally, how do we give them the tools so they're more productive?
Tim, do you find in businesses that the ones that you're talking to, also TMF, that most people now are like actively engaging, or is there still some people who are not using AI?
Oh, look, I think, again, my opinion is I think Most organisations are.
Yeah.
It's like, my analogy is like, it's like when the internet, when the whole .com boom, and I lived through that. I was young, but I still saw it all, and I remember those same synergies of the world's going to end, and
Yes.
so I feel there's some tipping points that are very similar to that, and so I think all organisations have gone in and said, look, we need to be across this because we don't want to miss out, and they shouldn't, because I think it's such a great tool and it's a great capability for all of us. However, I think where the challenge is now, it's based on some of the productivity that's being, efficiencies that have been gained through areas of business. What else can we do, and what else can we do with it? And then the cost of that, I think that's starting to it was underestimated. It was well, hey, we can do all this, but now it's what's the cost of it? I'm sure all these organisations that have this capability and provide these capabilities to other companies, they've got a commercial model or a pricing model that goes with it as well. And then where's that going, right? And then the other piece is maintaining these databases and the infrastructure. Again, I'm not an expert around it, but what I hear and what I read about it is that's starting to become a concern, which is a concern of how do we manage that, in country, which countries can manage it, who's got the capacity to manage it. What does that mean in terms of driving that investment into our countries? What's the obligations that we have? So all those deep questions are being asked right now, and I think that it has a downstream effect on all of us. With some organisations will start to weigh up when that tipping point of cost start to hit.
Yes.
Do we need people versus what level of AI do we need? I think that's what type of efficiencies do we need, and what level are we willing to stop at, based on just having an open door to saying we'll just keep doing it and see where it lands. Again, that's my opinion, but I think that's what I'm seeing.
You brought up before, at each level, a major revolution of technology. People have said, the sky's falling in and the world's going to end. And, obviously this happened in the Industrial Revolution, the advent of cars, the advent of the personal computer.
Yeah.
The internet, and now is our next big one. And at each point, people say, "Oh well, we're going to all lose our jobs."
Sure.
They thought the same thing with the advent of the personal computer in the late 70s, early 80s. I think that's a great point that you brought up, because it's just about how we work it out. There's anxiety, but I think we're moving beyond that now to work out how it can augment how we work.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's such a critical point too, because I think it's such a positive, right? It's not and I'm a glass half full type of person, but I still think, I sit there and I think this is us evolving. Like this is a good thing. However, like with any tool or any type of movement forward, like you said, like if you go back 150 years, 100 years, it was the development of a car, right? So, and what impacts that it had on the horse and carriage, right? And so it's a bit like that. Where it's a little bit different, it's, in my mind, it's not as physical. So typically when you see the Industrial Revolution or all those types of things that sort of occurred in history, it seems to be more physical, right? And I think with this, it's sitting through the same ways that we typically have been operating through, like you said, computers and the internet, but it's giving this new capability around thinking. And we talked about it at the start, which is that whole piece around the critical thinking component. And I think where the edge is at the moment in terms of generations, right? Because I was literally thinking about this as well, where I'm sort of where am I in my career? Probably, I'd say I'm halfway through it, a bit not more, if not more, right? However, I've lived a lot in my little lifespan in terms of my career, where I started, where internet was becoming a thing, e-commerce was becoming a thing, and then how we engaged changed in terms of the internet, and then the evolution of in terms of the iPhone and all that type of stuff in terms of how we engage for apps. And so I've seen personally, I've seen all the manual to all the automation that's happening at the moment, and I can sit there and I can still reflect and say, well, if this situation is this, maybe we can think about this and then get this type of outcome, because we're still in the workforce. But with the new generation coming in, and the generation changing in terms of the if you look at the demographics in terms of maturity and age, there's a lot of skills are going to be moving out of the workforce. So going back to the workforce piece, I think AI will do two things, right? It will help with the movement of that age population out of the workforce, and how it will do that is giving more capacity, more capability per person in terms of AI and the capability of AI. However, it's where I'm sort of got a question mark around it personally, and it's like, what does that mean from a critical thinking piece, right? Because we've got natural experience because we're in the workforce, what's post and pre. So where is it going to be in the next 10 to 15 years? Like, that would be interesting. And we'll probably get to that, but that's something that I'm interested in the moment, just for myself, just seeing that change process.
I'm interested in that too, because yes, if I had grown up, even in school, using AI to write my essays, and I just sort of correct it, even forming sentences, all that sort of stuff. How's that going to be incorporated if I'm a child right now? And who knows? Maybe your kids won't be working. Who knows? But I suspect they will.
Yeah. Look, I think working in the way we work, yes, it'll be different. But working's still going to be. It's who we are. It's like. It's what you choose to do in your life, right? So that's not good. I think that's only going to evolve. So whatever your career is and whatever you have passion for, and it goes back to what I was saying before, which is, I think, the purpose piece. I think AI is, if you know your purpose, AI will help you with your purpose. But I think career and purpose are still going to be interlocked.
Yeah.
But the way that we work, and if you think about it, I don't think it's new. Like, again, this is my opinion. Like, if you think about work was completely. The synergy, you say certain roles would have the same type of outputs 100 years ago. However, there's a lot of roles that don't exist that were mainstream roles and career paths. So that's what AI is going to do. I think, again, in my opinion, is that it's only going to help us be more strategic around outcome. Right? That's how I see it too. Right? It's not. We're still like the organics of consciousness and all that. If you go deep into that, at the end of the day, it's not that. It's a tool that understands the data. So it's got a database that it works off, and it subsequently has the capability of giving some great outputs for you as a user to utilize to get to get a better outcome, right? So I still think work will still be work, but it won't be how we see it. But I think the careers and the responsibility of what you want to do might deviate. And again, going back to the conversation I had with I was listening to this morning and having a conversation with my son about it. Like, he's always loved programming since he was a kid, and he's a teenager now. And so if you go back 5-6 years ago, I just thought that's what he's going to do. He's going to be a software engineer. He's going to definitely go into that career path. However, he still wants to do that, but he's a great problem solver. So my thinking is with him, and we spoke about it, which is that's the evolution of work. The work's going to be, you have to be a great problem solver, have critical thinking across a whole range of technical skills and requirements to be functional in the work environment in the future, right?
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
I talk to my niece and my nephews about, your generation is going to be ones that actually, the ones that do really well, the ones that have the human element that are great communicators, there's high empathy,
Yeah.
and yes, great problem solvers.
Yeah.
Because those elements are going to be absolutely even more important in the future, I believe.
Yeah, and where I get passionate around that is that when we think about, like if you think about your day job, most people, the administration part, it's hard to get motivation around it. So you're constantly saying, well, this is the baseline administration that I have to do in this role.
Yeah.
I have to achieve it and I have to do it. So AI is going to definitely help with that. So it puts you in a position where you can be strategic around what you want out of your role, right? So, and that's where I think we're not moving our lens to. We still got this. We still got our thinking process. We still got our imagination. We still got our critical, capacity to sort of say, what else can I do, and how else can we do it? Because that's where we all want to be, right? Like I said, if you go to the average person, they will say, admin keeps me bogged down, or this keeps, and I've been there and I do it today. I still say it. But then I think to myself, how do I can't wait till this is automated so then I can start thinking about what I want to do. Again, with my career and the passion of what I'm meant to deliver in that job. So, yeah. So I think that's key. That's key. That's why I think AI is amazing in that sense. Yeah.
Tim, we on Evolving Workforce, we like to play a few games.
Yep.
And the first one's called 3 quick games before we finish, humans versus AI. And so in your view, what should humans own outright in a workforce context, workforce control, if you like? And what should we be comfortable in AI handling, like the administration tasks that you were talking about?
Yeah, look, I think humans should own purpose, right? I think we shouldn't let go of that, right? And that's intertwined with what I'm saying with regards to what I'm seeing, which is, what are you going to ask the AI? That's you. You should know what you want to ask the AI, and have a purpose of what the outcome you're looking for. So I think purpose is key, and then what goes with that is intent. You have to own the intent as humans compared to the AI owning your intent, right? Which is, you don't need to outsource your intent to AI to say, what should I do? It should be, here's what I'm thinking, purpose. This is what I want, how I want to do it. What are your suggestions in terms of how I can achieve that? And that goes to the last point. Humans should own the goal. Like you should own the goal of what you're trying to achieve. And if you put all that together, then AI is your biggest companion, right? In terms of AI, I would say where AI's got great capacity or potential is that it can do things at a rapid speed that you can dream of doing as a human, right? So what I mean by that is it could be the calculations, it could be analysis, it could be review of the data that it's got access to. And that piece there, I think, should be even, I can't wait to see what it does, like, because then you're going to achieve so many goals with that, right? So you're starting to hear those stories now, right? Which is, we've got, from the sort of again, this is my reading and my opinion around it. Like if you look at the healthcare side, which like we have all these diseases and there's a lot of smart humans that are involved in that. But how about if you, like I said, augment AI into those types of roles, where we're going to go as a society, where we're going to take it, which I think for this generation and the new generation, my son and my daughter and the new generations are going to come, it's going to be amazing outputs over the next, who knows, over the next 10 to 15 to 20 years.
So exciting to see.
Yeah, so I think that's where AI, I think is an amazing tool in that sense. That's AI's role. But I still think at the end of the day, AI can't be, it can give guidance, like going back to TMF, advisory, it's you need to build that out with the right people that you can get access to, or humans. And then I think AI is a guidance tool. AI can be something that can help facilitate those outcomes.
Perfect. Love it. I totally agree with you. That makes a lot of sense, Tim. And it brings me to the next game, which is change your mind. What's something that you would have believed about AI's impact on workforce maybe 2-3 years ago that you completely changed your mind on?
Yeah, look, my thinking about AI was it was evolving to be a substitute for certain outcomes, right? Now, for example, say if you've got an organisation that wants to run a balance sheet or an accounting or whatever it may be, and AI can do a lot of that work in terms of getting those outcomes, I'm sure. However, there's still going to be components that have to be led by human engagement and expertise in that field, right? So what I thought was is just going to, and maybe it will, right? But my view at the moment is there's definitely areas of tipping points that the capacity questions getting answered that, like I said to you, costs, resourcing, environmental impacts, capacity of having this infrastructure in place, which countries will probably get through that. But I think at the moment, I just thought it was endless. But now I'm just thinking everybody's starting to understand. Just now they're starting to understand, like, what does that really mean, and what are the impacts around my organisation, my client base, my employees, and the countries that I'm operating in.
Now, the next one is one prediction and one warning. What's one prediction you make about AI and in the workforce across Asia and APAC region over the next two years or so?
Yeah, so look, again, my prediction is it's gonna become more of a companion capacity compared to a sort of a substitute, and then also at the moment you'd think it's sort of a subservient type of it's put in what I want and give me what you. I think the relationship's only going to blend better in terms of usage. So I think everybody's starting every day. You're getting better and better and saying, what do I want out of my AI tool, or whatever from a workforce management standpoint. So, for example, from a workforce management perspective, I think it's going to help with. I'll give you a couple of examples actually. Thinking about how you engage with employees. What we're noticing, what I've noticed is that employees are really understanding who and what their policies are around their internal organisation, right? So an organisation will have set policies that they put in place, and those documents at times are quite heavy. So an individual would have to go through a lot of personal review, right? Yes. So I think that AI is going to help a lot of employees to say, what does this document really mean for you, right? And that's a new place for everyone, because it's going to give capacity very quickly to employees to understand what are the responsibilities of my organisation and my role in the organisation. And that's in country, that's my leadership, what's the obligations of my leadership to my role and what it may be. And it's going to be a lot of change. Like, I think there's going to be so my passion around this is that I think payroll teams, HR, are going to become even more critical, and workforce management, all these tools and all this software and all the people that manage these systems, it's going to be massively critical, because everyone was going to start to use AI and have a different type of working engagement relationship with employer-employee type of situations, right? And they could be from career development, career progression, skill development, to performance management, grievance. All those areas are going to definitely have a high emphasis, and AI is going to give the capacity to the employee to ask those types of questions, where in the past it's an investment for that employee to get that access to that information that makes sense to their situation, right? So meaning they'd have to go and speak to someone of that skill set for them to review it to get that outcome, like, whatever, if they have access to associations or to lawyers or to, whatever it may be in terms of that support. I think now they're getting there still. So I think there's going to be huge change. I think that employee relationship is not an employer relationship. It's going to evolve. And those policies, workforce management policies, HR, all those types of policies are going to be critical. They're not going to be just, black and white. They're going to have to evolve, and they're going to have to really be powerful. But I think it's a huge opportunity both ways. I don't think it's going to have its challenges, and it's going to cause disruption, and it's going to cause friction at times. But I think the positive is it's going to cut out a lot of ambiguity in terms of what do we need to do to help our employee. What are my responsibilities to help the organisation? So that's my big thing. I think that's where it's going to be exciting in terms of where it's going to go.
And Tim, one warning. So in terms of thinking about organisations and workforce expanding into APAC, what are we likely to get wrong, or if we don't watch out for compliance or whatever it might be?
Yeah, I think AI is not governance. So, and that's something that everybody needs to consider. And what does that mean? Again, it means AI will give guidance. To be fair, at times you have to still challenge the guidance because you have to make sure that the sources are right in terms of the output. It's not. It can give you really good guidance and it can give you a high percentage range of what that looks like. However, it's not governance. Mm-hmm. So I think that's you can't outsource governance and policy. That has with the employees and workforce management, like what I said before. So I think that's something that it's going to become very critical, and as leaders, you have to understand. You can get all the tools in the world, but if you haven't got the right governance and you haven't got the right structures in terms of what's required, the liability is not going to disappear with AI.
Tim, thank you so much for joining us on Evolving Workforce. I think this has been an amazing chat.
Thank you.
You're absolutely right in terms of keeping that human in the loop. That's something we talk about quite a bit here on Evolving Workforce. We really appreciate your time. Is there anything that you wanted to cover that we didn't cover that leaders should be thinking about in terms of AI, workforce, Asia, expansion?
Yeah, look, I just think it's a huge opportunity, and it's the best opportunity you've got to engage with the employees and have mutual outcomes that benefit both your clients and the performance of your company. I don't think there's ever been a bigger opportunity than this. So I think all the end of the world type of vision around AI, I personally don't think that's what it is. I think it's a huge opportunity, and you got to treat it that way. Yep.
Thanks so much for coming on Evolving Workforce, Tim.
Thank you. Cheers. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.
Evolving Workforce was proudly brought to you by OHI, specialists in workforce management, award interpretation and payroll compliance, delivering new certainty. This podcast was recorded on the land of the Gadigal people. If you enjoyed this podcast, why not send to a friend or a colleague? And remember to hit follow on your podcast player to get every episode as they drop every Wednesday. Thanks for listening. I've been Dave Kenyon, and this is Evolving Workforce.